What we've got is the very first detailed account of all of the injuries that were sustained to Richard. So we found a total of 11 injuries. 9 of those were to his skull and 2 of those were to other parts of his body. So there was 1 on the rib and 1 to the pelvis. Of the injuries to the skull, what we know is that there were several injuries that went into the top of his skull, one with a rondel dagger that went in around here, and there were some shaving type injuries. There was also an injury through his cheek and to the front of his jaw. What we've got here is a mark that's been left by a knife, and we can tell it's a knife because what we've got here is a V-shaped profile when we look at that wound in cross-section. And we can tell it was a knife rather than a sword because if it was a sword injury we'd expect much more chipping and flaking around the bone. There's an injury to the pelvis, and we do have images from medieval battles of people sustaining those injuries, but the angle would have been wrong while still wearing his armour. So what we think is more likely is that his armour was removed and the weapon was inflicted afterwards. And it's consistent with the contemporary account of him being slung over the back of a horse. And I think it's an insult injury where somebody has stuck a sword or a long dagger in through his right buttock that's gone through and into the pelvis after death.
Retreat! Retreat!
The contemporary accounts of the battle are that Richard fought bravely, that he fought in a manly way. We know for the injuries to the skull that his helmet must have either been lost or removed by that point, and whether it was removed by Richard himself or whether it was forcibly removed, we can't tell. He was looked at in 3 ways. The first way was the conventional way in which archaeologists would look at the bones, so a visual examination. He was also looked at using a medical computed tomography scanner, which is the sort of technology that's used in hospitals for looking at live patients as well as performing autopsies, and that allows you to map the dimensions of the bones, to tell you about his sex, to tell you about the age of the skeleton, to determine things like his height. And then what we've done in this lab here is we've used a technique called micro-computed X-ray tomography, which allows you to get much higher resolution images of the actual injuries to the bones.